Our cup runneth over. Las Vegas Chinatown has had 2 major Chinese restaurant openings in as many weeks, both from Southern California. This is the second one we've covered. And at this rate, Chinese food lovers in Las Vegas are getting completely spoiled. But this newest opening caught me completely off guard. And the first thing we tried may be one of the most unusual burgers you've ever seen. This is called Rojiamo, often described as a Chinese hamburger. Versions of meat stuffed into this style of flatbread have been eaten in China for centuries. So technically, the Chinese were doing their version of a burger long before we were. And if you've never tried one of these, you don't know what you're missing. And if you have tried one, you know just how good they are, and here, they're not to be missed. So where are we exactly? Today, we're at the brand new Changan Kitchen in Las Vegas's unbelievable Chinatown. So getting back to this burger, this isn't like any burger you've ever had. In fact, I'd venture to say that if somebody wanted to make a mint, they could open up a burger joint right here in the US of A, selling nothing but different versions of these Chinese burgers. Well, there's some food for thought. Changan offers them with beef or cumin lamb as well. But you know me, I do love pork, so this one is right up my alley. The pork is stewed until beautifully tender and seasoned with cumin, a hint of garlic, and all those wonderful aromatics. But what really surprised me was the bread. Traditionally, Rojiamo is made with a fairly simple flatbread called mo. But this version is almost like a delicate multi-layered croissant. As soon as you bite into it, those thin, crisp layers just shatter everywhere. They have a buttery quality to the bread, and that flaky texture works beautifully with the rich, juicy stewed pork inside. The contrast between that crisp, delicate exterior and the tender pork is what makes these things so addictive. Seriously, someone needs to open that Chinese burger joint. Welcome to Let's Eat Vegas. I'm a chef and former restaurant owner, and I tell it like it is. And if someone did open up a Chinese burger joint selling nothing but these, I'd be the first one in line. Wow, what a way to start. Now from something you may have never seen before to one of my all-time favorite Chinese dishes. Mapo tofu is one of Sichuan province's most famous dishes. According to tradition, it was created by a woman known as Chen Mapo, whose small restaurant became famous for this fiery combination of tofu, meat, chili bean paste, and Sichuan peppercorns. Most of you know that I fell in love with Chinese food and Chinese culture while working at my very first job. Back then, Mapo tofu wasn't something they served to the American guests. It was made for the family and the people working in the kitchen. Most Americans simply weren't familiar with it yet and probably wouldn't have understood the combination of intense heat, fermented flavors, soft tofu, and that strange tingling sensation from the Sichuan peppercorns. Thankfully, times have changed. The internet has exposed adventurous food lovers to dishes that once rarely appeared. Today you can find Mapo tofu at many of the most authentic Chinese restaurants throughout Las Vegas's Chinatown. And this may be the best version I've yet had. The flavor is astonishingly deep, rich, savory, spicy, and loaded with fermented complexity. But what really separates this version is the addition of delicious, slow-roasted brisket. The meat is tender, intensely beefy, and brings a slow-cooked richness that carries through the entire dish. Then, of course, there's the generous amount of Sichuan peppercorn. After a few bites, your lips and tongue begin to tingle and then slowly go numb. Now, you'd think that might make you stop eating, but it does the exact opposite. You immediately want another bite. I found this dish powerful, profoundly flavorful, and completely addictive. Well, after all those intense flavors, I wanted to see what they could do with something a little more subtle. Now, many of you have noted that I almost never order fried rice at a Chinese restaurant. So today, I finally had to do it. And this fried rice definitely has been prepared properly. However, I do find this is a bit dull and bland, an affliction of which fried rice is frequently guilty. That actually reminds me of an experience from my childhood. My mother was obsessed with Mr. Chow's, which at that time, its only US location was in Beverly Hills. My father hated the place, as he felt there was a bit of the Emperor's New Clothes vibe going on. Everybody was so convinced the food was extraordinary that nobody wanted to be the person who said otherwise. The first time I went there, I was just a kid. I took a bite of the fried rice, And the server asked me, "How is it?" And I said, "It tastes like nothing." My mother kicked me under the table. Well, this fried rice is several steps above Mr. Chow's. In my opinion, that was a 4 out of 10, and I'd say this is a 7. It has a really nice, mild aromatic flavor, it's properly seasoned, and you get those aromatics coming through in every bite. The shrimp aren't gigantic. In fact, they're on the smaller side. But at least they're seasoned, they have a pleasing texture, and they actually contribute something to the dish. So, better than Mr. Chow's, but still, in my mind, the fried rice here is more a wallflower in that it's pleasing, but nothing that's going to bowl you over. Funny, after my mother's attitude adjusting kick, she told me I should be less openly critical at a restaurant. Well, if you're glad that lesson never took hold and appreciate honest, meaningful food reviews, this would be a good time to like, comment, share, hype, or subscribe. Yet over 60% of all YouTube viewers aren't subscribed. Subscribe today and join the Let's Eat Vegas family. Many Chinese places call this dish oil spill noodles. A curious name, which the first time I heard of it brought to mind the Exxon Valdez oil spill back in '89. But these oil spill noodles are anything but a disaster and are honestly fantastic. Hot oil noodles are a specialty of Shaanxi province in northwestern China, an area famous for its wheat and its incredible noodle culture. They're closely related to the wide, hand-pulled biang-biang noodles the region is known for. In fact, the name biang-biang is often said to come from the sound the dough makes when those long strips are slapped against the counter. Although if that's true, I think these noodles should be called whack-whack noodles. Anyway, I digress. Now, the hot oil part isn't just a catchy name. Traditionally, chili, garlic, scallions, and other seasonings are placed over the freshly cooked noodles, and then smoking hot oil is poured right over the top. That hot oil instantly blooms those aromatics and spices, releasing all those wonderful flavors before everything gets tossed together. And the noodles themselves are fantastic, with that perfect chew you get from freshly made, hand-pulled noodles. But the sauce is something else I love. As many of you know, I can't get enough spice. And if you're a spice lover, as I am, this dish is for you. So, this is one of my favorites they knocked out of the park. But now my thoughts turn to one thing I absolutely had to try, especially after what happened at another grand opening just a few weeks ago. You may recall that a few weeks ago, we attended the grand opening of another famous restaurant that had expanded into the Las Vegas Chinatown. That other restaurant actually has the word dumpling in its name, but unfortunately, their dumplings really weren't very good. But these, well, they put those to shame. What separates them is the texture. They're steamed perfectly, and the dough has that wonderful chew and strong structure you want in a great dumpling. They hold together beautifully, never fall apart, and are incredibly satisfying to eat. Inside is a delicious mixture of pork and Chinese cabbage, seasoned with a touch of garlic and white pepper. The filling is juicy, savory, and perfectly balanced against that chewy wrapper. Of course, I'm dipping them into what I call my holy trinity sauce, a simple combination of Chinese black vinegar, chili oil, and soy sauce. My adopted mother, Rose, taught me how to make it at the tea house where I had my first job, and I've been eating dumplings that way ever since. These are absolutely fantastic. Well, they set the bar awfully high, and then came something I wasn't nearly as enthusiastic about ordering. I asked our server what she recommended, and she told me to try the crispy squid. I'll admit I almost declined and asked her for her second choice, but she was so adorable and sweet about it, I just said, sure. Now, I usually have a love-hate relationship with Chinese-style squid. I love to hate it. But this is a horse of a different color. There's absolutely no fishiness whatsoever. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves with squid. The other is grease. So often fried squid arrives oily and heavy. These, as you can see, are not greasy at all. And strangely enough, if you didn't tell me what I was eating, I'm not even sure I would have guessed it was seafood. You know how people try to convince you to eat something strange by saying, oh, it tastes like chicken. Well, I'm not saying this actually tastes like chicken, but the flavor is clean, mild, and approachable. I also love the Chinese 5-spice they use. And more importantly, they use it sparingly. just enough to give the squid a wonderful aromatic flavor without taking over the whole dish. The batter is light and beautifully crisp, but not so hard and crunchy that it separates from the squid, which happens all the time with fried calamari. Everything stays together in one perfect bite. So if you love squid, try these. And if you hate squid, try these. They're irresistible. Well, that certainly didn't go the way I expected. Next, we changed directions completely. Yang pea is another classic dish, with roots going back centuries in northwestern China. And one of the really interesting things about this dish is that almost nothing goes to waste. Traditionally, wheat dough is washed to separate the starch from the gluten. The starch is used to make the noodles, while the gluten becomes those little pieces you see on top. They act like tiny sponges. Frankly, they kind of look like them as well, soaking up all that wonderful peanut sauce, sesame oil, and seasonings. I order this dish whenever I can. It was my older sister's all-time favorite, as she put it, Asian way to eat noodles. She was more than 10 years my senior, and I looked up to her. So when she taught me to eat yang pea when I was about 10 years old, I pretended to love it. And then somewhere along the way, I actually did, and I've craved it ever since. The sauce here is excellent because it's not overly sweet. There are all kinds of aromatic background notes going on, and the different chilies start out fairly subtle, but slowly build in intensity as you keep eating. I'd happily have kept eating every morsel, but there was still another version of one of my favorite Chinese foods waiting on the table. Okay, here is another sensational version of a dumpling I've eaten and enjoyed 100 times before, but these take it to another level. The filling has the kind of deep, concentrated flavor you normally get from a slowly cooked pot roast. It immediately reminded me of a recipe from my childhood made with pot roast and Lipton onion soup mix. Does anyone else remember that? My aunt used to bring it to family potlucks. It was, quite literally, an out-of-the-box dish. And while my mother would never have made it using Lipton's anything, I absolutely loved it. The soup mix gave the roast an incredibly savory flavor. And yes, this time I'm talking about the umami that comes from MSG, not the naturally occurring type. These dumplings have a remarkably similar depth. The onions taste intensely caramelized, but they never overwhelm the beef. Instead, they bring out the richness of what I'm told is roasted brisket, giving the filling an almost electric savory flavor. The bottoms are beautifully pan-fried, providing a crisp contrast to the tender wrapper and juicy filling. My impression was that these dumplings are made by Changan Kitchen, but off-site, which isn't uncommon as the restaurant business grows. It's a great way to achieve consistency across your locations. Now, I know that may sound less romantic than someone slaving away in the back, folding countless dumplings moments before they're dropped into the wok and brought to your table, but when the results are this good, I'm all in. These may very well be the best beef and onion dumplings I've ever eaten. Well, after all that rich, savory food, it was finally time to move in a sweeter direction. So the owner spotted us and brought us out these sesame balls. I used to love these little glutinous rice gems as a kid, and I actually learned to make them in my teens. They're remarkably easy to prepare. They've been around in China for centuries, and you see them a lot at dim sum. Chinese desserts generally aren't nearly as sweet as what we're used to in the United States, and these are a perfect example. They're made from glutinous rice flour, which gives them that wonderfully chewy, almost mochi-like texture, then rolled in sesame seeds and fried until the outside becomes crisp and lightly toasted. Inside, you get that traditional sweet red bean paste. They're sweet, but I wouldn't really put them completely into dessert territory. Some of the best sesame balls I've had recently were filled with custard. Now those satisfied my considerable sweet tooth. These left me wanting something sweet afterward. Okay, time to get back to the savory side of things. Popcorn chicken. It's also known as Taiwanese salt and pepper chicken or shaken chicken. It became one of Taiwan's most beloved street foods and is now a staple of the island's famous night markets. Changan's version is extraordinary. I love the generous use of cumin, along with what tastes to me like a Taiwanese-style spice blend. Then you get that subtle tingling sensation from the Sichuan peppercorns, which makes every bite even more interesting. They use thigh meat, so the chicken is moist, tender, and remarkably fresh tasting. The coating is shatteringly crisp without being heavy or greasy. It's wonderful all by itself, but dipping it into their scratch-made chili oil or little Chinese black vinegar takes it to an even higher level. I highly recommend this dish. Well, that was wonderful, but one of the dishes I was most interested in trying just landed on the table. Well, this turned out to be my favorite dish of the day. It looks like we really did save the best for last. These sautéed spicy chicken noodles are outrageously good. Once again, we have that welcome recurring theme of Sichuan peppercorns, bringing heat along with that wonderful numbing sensation. The chicken is stewed on the bone, which gives the entire dish a depth and richness that boneless chicken simply cannot provide. This reminds me of the kind of food you might see simmering in enormous pots at a busy Chinese market stall. Every ingredient has had time to absorb the broth, spices, and flavor from the chicken. Most of you probably know by now that cumin and oregano are sort of my kryptonite. My mother and I have always been unusually sensitive to both of them. When used sparingly, they can bring out the very best in a dish. But when someone gets carried away, they take over and become all you can taste. Here, the cumin is handled perfectly. You know it's there, but it supports the other flavors instead of overwhelming them. The carrots, onions, and potatoes are all delicious, having soaked up that deeply seasoned sauce. But the real star of the show are the hand-pulled noodles. They're absolutely fantastic. Thick, chewy, tender, and incredibly satisfying. They immediately reminded me of the noodles at Yoon Noodle and Dumpling, my favorite noodle restaurant in Las Vegas. That's about the highest compliment I can give, and these are every bit as good. For this boy with some hot Italian blood running through his veins, the fastest way to my heart has always been through great homemade pasta. Whether it comes from Italy or China, when the dough is handmade and cooked properly, I'm completely helpless. This is one of the best dishes I've tasted in many years. On a scale of 1 to 10, this is an 11. Well, 11 out of 10. I don't hand that out very often, and there was only one thing left to do after that. Fry some milk. I know, the name sounds impossible. How exactly do you fry milk? Well, this dish comes from Cantonese cooking traditions and are traditionally made with rich water buffalo milk. The modern crispy version dates back to about the 1970s when chefs began thickening the milk until it could be chilled, cut into pieces, battered, and then fried. They're absolutely not to be missed. They're fantastic. So, as I said, the milk is cooked with starch and a little sugar until it thickens into almost a soft custard. Once it cools and firms up, it can be cut, coated, and dropped into hot oil. And what you end up with is this wonderful contrast. The outside has these sharp, crisp edges, but when you bite through that shell, the center is incredibly soft, creamy, and pudding-like. I love that warm milk flavor inside. They give you sweetened condensed milk for dipping, but honestly, they don't need anything. They're terrific, completely on their own. What I really like is that for an Asian dessert, these are surprisingly sweet. Sure, this isn't your average American dessert where the theme is, if a little sugar is good, half a pound must be better. These are just sweet enough to let you know you're having a dessert without overwhelming everything else. It's a light, wonderful way to finish a meal, and one of many excellent surprises here. So, there you have it. Another Chinese grand opening in Las Vegas that seriously impressed me with a couple of dishes that truly stood out. Changan Kitchen turned out to be one of the strongest new Chinese restaurants we've tried in quite a while. The dumplings were terrific, the noodles were outstanding, and that spicy chicken noodle dish is one I'm going to be thinking about for a long time. If this is the direction Las Vegas Chinatown is heading, I'm certainly not complaining, and we're truly being spoiled. Well, we'll be back to Changan Kitchen very soon. Who knows, maybe you'll see us there. And when you do go, make sure to tell them, Let's Eat Vegas sent you. So if all this has you craving even more great Asian food, click right here and check out some of my favorites in Las Vegas. Or check out this video. Either way, You can't go wrong. Until we eat again, bon appetit.